For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning, everybody. Good morning. Yes, first of all, so those FOMC minutes, that is the Fed's forward look at the way interest rates are going, relatively hawkish yesterday. So therefore, markets in Asia Pacific fairly mixed. The Bank of Korea remained at 3.5%. That's the first pause in a year of rate hikes. So and the Japanese markets are closed because of their emperor's birthday. So generally speaking, investors trying to deal with the Fed. I don't know why they're trying to deal with it now, because I would have thought it's pretty obvious, but the Fed is still remaining relatively hawkish. Hong Kong announced its budget, as I was talking about yesterday. Hong Kong's finance minister, Paul Chan, is talking about abundant opportunities in the city of Hong Kong. They're also giving each resident 5,000 Hong Kong dollars, that's about 637 American dollars, each as a sort of consumer voucher to spend to keep the economy actually going. It sounds a lot. In fact, last year it was more. It was 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. Last year, but that's what they're doing to try to boost the consumer economy. Japan, now again, we've noted, haven't we, that their inflation is the highest for 40 years, and they're paying the workers at Toyota and Honda slightly more as well. These are the biggest, well, they're slightly more. These are the biggest increases in pay increases in decades. But what it's trying to do, and again, this is just an experiment, but as inflation rises, thus the cost of living rises, and so therefore this is supposed to be helpful for Honda and to Toyota workers. Will it apply to other industries in Japan? Don't know yet, but it's probably a starting sign. As far as the United States is concerned, I mentioned the FOMC minutes. The markets actually fell on the result of that. I cannot see why they did, particularly, although it's pretty obvious that the Fed is not going to pivot, as they put it, away from its interest rate policy, which is trying to contain inflation, which they were only saying last week was fairly sticky, both in the US and, of course, and in the UK. We're going to hear from Alibaba, Papa John's, Warner Brothers, and also Discovery Channel, which will give us a good idea, or give them, the United States, a good idea of where the consumers actually going. And Wall Street is going to suffer, its thoughts, slightly from IPOs from China, because the Chinese authorities are making it slightly different, maybe slightly easier, but at least they're saying what they want from IPOs in China. And so China may get those. These are Chinese companies, therefore not going to Wall Street, but staying within China to list on their stock exchanges there. As far as Russia's concerned, the EU is probing so-called third-party exports to Russia, for example, through countries like Turkey and Armenia. David O'Sullivan is the EU newly appointed EU sanctions envoy, and there is a thought that many companies within the EU are willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, exporting to Russia through third parties. The EU also is looking to benefiting from is looking towards its energy policies as well. The IEA is warning very, very strongly that Europe's energy worries are not over. They may have been helped by this mild winter, but next year still plenty of danger to come, and that's really what they're worried about. So again, a mild winter this year has helped energy markets, but it's not necessarily guaranteed for next year. The IEA is warning about that. As far as the UK is concerned, the Prime Minister, we've been talking about this yesterday, the Northern Ireland Protocol, the opposition parties are saying that he is held hostage by malcontents within his own party, and it really these are the Northern Ireland trade rules and so on. Again, he's probably got to go back to Brussels to talk about this. He seems to be caught in a sort of in a mud pit, really, of problems about all this. And the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, is not necessarily buying his arguments, and they are the main sticking point, as they always have been, as far as Northern Ireland's recent history is concerned. The UK also, public services, doesn't matter who's in power, according to the so-called non-partisan Institute for Government. They're saying that it doesn't matter who's in power, the teachers, the nurses, the NHS, the judiciary, prisons. We'll need more money from somewhere in the economy to keep public services going. Doesn't matter who wins the next election, which is slated for 2024. And finally, oil, still really worried about increase in interest rates and the growth of the global economy, still within a range, not moving out of it, as we saw the other day, lost about what WTI and Brent both lost about 1% as far as international oil markets are concerned. That is the global view this morning.
Real quickly, concerning Northern Ireland, isn't this a reflection of the Brexit hypocrisy that was done in the UK? Correct me if I'm wrong. While all the debates went on for Brexit, nobody thought about Northern Ireland. All the politicians in the UK were busy debating was on the curvature of bananas. Now they are putting in backstops. So where have we become now from backstops to what we are going through now? Do you think a Tory government can solve this, or it's time for them to go?
I mean, I wouldn't be wanting a government to go. I'd rather put it in the hands of the voters, quite honestly. They will make their own mind up about this. This is a situation which is incredibly complicated and not being helped by the Democratic, the so-called Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland. It's intensely complicated. The politics have always been, was there a rush to get Brexit done? Yes, there certainly was. You have to push things through. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that's what happened. And it was felt that this would resolve itself or be resolved in the future. It's proving incredibly difficult to do so. But I suspect it probably will be solved one way or the other. Why the UK, the Westminster-based government doesn't just say to the DUP, okay, fine, you've had your say, now we're going to go ahead with it. They don't do that because they're worried about the balance of power. I think that's where this lies. It's all about politics now. It was about trade, now it's about politics.
All right, still on trade, Russia, Ukraine, and the EU, the role the EU plays. A few days back, we talked about the effect or perhaps the impact of sanctions on Russia, despite the fact that the economy still seemed to be doing quite well despite sanctions imposed by different countries, including Europe. Now, this report around backdoor trade with Russia from Europe, from some European companies to Turkey, like you mentioned, and Armenia. What kind of sanctions would the EU be looking to give to these organizations who are found culpable? And can it really end? Because Russia and Europe, as trade partners, benefit immensely. Is it possible to totally shut that down with sanctions, or perhaps reduce it to the barest minimum?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you can. I don't think you can deal with trade like that. I mean, I'm not a trade commissioner, but I'm looking at it and looking at what's going on at the moment. And unfortunately, countries like Armenia and Turkey will trade with Russia. Where the original trade comes from, who alone knows? You cannot cut it off. I mean, this is part of the problem of the interconnection of economies, which has grown up over globalization since I suppose the beginning of the 2000s, basically. However, I was reading, and again, I don't really know how they get this, but figures from the Russians' own finance ministry show that the level of debt to GDP is absolutely massive in that country. So whatever they're doing, if you add in the fact that they cannot sell oil at the price that they want to, they cannot sell energy at the price that they want to, and they also have a huge amount of public debt, government debt, I suspect that this cannot go on forever. And I think that Russia will eventually feel the pain. I mean, I know that Putin gave his equivalent of the State of the Nation address. You remember that it was postponed last year because the Ukraine is what he called special operation, what the rest of us call war and invasion, wasn't going to plan. This time he did, but he was talking. I mean, if you read the reports of what he was saying, a lot of it is just right back to what we saw in the Cold War, and we know where that ended. Once the Russian people saw that the benefits, in inverted commas, of democracy, whether you think it's good or bad or whatever, and capitalism, then they soon began to pick faults in the system. I suspect this may well be the same for there. You cannot keep going. However much you sell your gold reserves, however much you try to mask the problems, if you have enormous government debt, it will catch up with you in the end.
Well, Mike, beyond Adani and Modi and allegations of crony capitalism in India, some positive news. Ahead of the summit of G20 finance ministers and governors of central bank in Bengaluru, we have the IMF chief, Georgieva, saying that India is a global engine for growth, and that India this year is likely to record growth of about 6.1%, in 2024 of about 6.8%. And the policy priorities being pushed is one earth, one family, one future. Now, what are those lessons that the rest of the world can learn from the example of India at a time we're being told that growth output this year will be far less than 3%?
The lessons from India are, if you say something loudly enough and consistently enough, then people will begin to believe it. Do you really think that India is the kind of place where the balance of power is such that it is shared amongst the people? No, it is not. Will it become an engine? It may well do, but where will that growth actually be? And will India, under a proper democracy, which, remember, George Soros was saying yesterday that it doesn't have because of the links between the Adani family and Modi. If you feel that that's the kind of state that you wish to live in and you think will prosper, then that's fine. I think they will have problems. I think they will have problems in the same way that China will have problems, because they are not concerning themselves with the simple demographics of the country, which are that there is, as far as India is concerned, an enormous poverty hanging over whatever else happens in the country. So there's a top level of people who are doing very well indeed, and that may well be the engine that they're talking about. But until they grasp the high-tech possibilities that the rest of the world is trying its best to, then it may well seem to be an engine. Whether it actually is or not, I have my doubts.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers.
Where are the implications,
all Nigeria.
Rotus?
You guys probably left early. You left earlier, so the implications came in. I have separate ones for you guys. But
okay.
The head of the EFCC is saying that 500 billion naira in unreturned in old notes is yet to be returned to the CBN. Where's the money? Where's the money? 500 billion. I wonder where it is. You have Dire Israel coming on today. Oh, okay. Let me start this over. So the EFCC is saying that over 500 billion in old notes is yet to be returned to the central bank. Where is the money? Where is it? What is it being used for? Maybe it's in a warehouse somewhere. But again, let me start over. You've got Dire Israel coming on. You've got Dele Momodu. You've got Pat Utomi. The three of them have to tell us about inclusive growth. Let me show you this video. I was coming from the gym this morning. Shout out to FitFam. And I passed Quillox nightclub. There was a line. This is it. A line of cars. You think they were lining up for fuel. This is 6 a.m. in the morning on a Thursday. And at the same time, where there's no cash, where there's fuel lines, there are a set of people that seem to be immune. Now, I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist, I'm not saying that, that we should target the wealthy here, but you must have inclusive growth. How are we going? This is 2 days before the election. We're getting arguably the most important numbers for our economy. So take a look. Just jump into it now. 3.52% in the fourth quarter. Economic growth, the GDP, 3.52% in the fourth quarter is what we saw. But compared to last year, the economy probably slowed down. I'm hoping we get those GDP figures any time now, but probably they're not up there yet. So anyway, 3.52%. And you had some of the top sectors, for example, being crop production, contributing about 24% to GDP. However, crop production is contributing 24%, yet food inflation is at 23%. Yet you have a lack of supply is not getting to the people. You also had growth in the non-oil sector, 4.4% growth in the non-oil sector. However, how long can that be maintained? The non-oil sector, even though contribution to GDP was about 95%, a new high for the year, oil sector continues to contract. The oil sector is still disproportionately contributing foreign exchange and government income. So as much as non-oil is growing and seems to be pushing GDP forward, it's not being, as Doctor likes to say, can you eat GDP? I'll stop there because frankly, these numbers that we're seeing, and for some reason we don't have the numbers yet, but these numbers is 3.52% growth, and year on year, annual growth was 3.01%. It's not being filtered down.
Oh, good. I mean, so, hey, hooray, we got a chance to speak today.
I know, right?
The truth has to be said, Rotus. Yeah. That has always been the problem. The fact that growth is not inclusive. And that's why when people make the argument that we've built infrastructure, we've done this, we've done that, I say, where is it in the life of the people?
Right.
And guess what, Rotus?
Yeah.
For arguments like this, thank God a certain man called Corrado Gini
exists.
was given birth to.
Yeah.
Corrado Gini propounded something called the Gini coefficient. Go look at it for Nigeria.
It's low.
It's so low,
It's
and
low.
that's why you see people hanging out in Quillox on a Thursday night. Mind you, the crowd is very low tonight. Tonight, goodness me, they blocked the whole,
they blocked the whole
part of the road.
Yeah.
And it's because of Corrado Gini's Gini coefficient. You can see people hanging out in Quillox, having a good time. You can see some people say, oh, I just borrowed 2 million naira chump change.
And I forgot about it.
And I forgot about it for a minute.
Yeah.
So the Gini coefficient is so high. What can we do? We need to redistribute wealth.
Yeah.
Many countries.
But you're not
have
a
done
socialist,
it.
huh?
I'm not a socialist.
You're not a communist,
I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist.
All right.
Lotus, but we need to redistribute wealth.
Please ask Daya Israel.
And how do we do it?
Dele Momodu.
How do we do it?
Patutomi, yeah.
You still largely need to do what I call the Robin Hood effect.
Okay.
Funny enough,
that's higher taxes.
I love Nottingham so much. I lived in Nottingham.
Yeah.
Robin Hood was from Nottingham. You need to take money
the
from those
wealthy
people and
give to the
redistribute it to the poor.
So that's higher taxes.
Yes, that's the way to go.
I'm with you on
I'm
that.
a Pikettyist. I'm
Tax
a Tomo Pikettyist.
the rich.
It's as simple as that.
But which of the candidates is talking about raising taxes?
All of, you see, the problem with all of them is that they are largely part of the elite class.
There you go.
There's still large crony capitalism. Dr. Abati, you were talking about crony capitalism in India.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, he was.
Humor me.
Yes, about Nigeria.
Citadel.
Okay, Rotus, I don't have a problem with people going to Quilos. If they wish, they can spend the whole day there, depending on what their choices are.
Okay.
After all, it's still a free country.
Yes.
The whole of this election is about freedom. So if you can indulge yourself, indulge yourself. The argument that we need to make is that what Stephen Blank calls the theory of the leisure class. Part of productivity is also to balance it with leisure time for society. But it should also be something that other people can have access to. Prosperity for all.
Yeah.
One family.
Yes.
The idea of one family
Yes.
that delivers prosperity for every member of society. So, where the challenge lies, with your reference to the political parties, is that the political parties that are coming in must realize that economic growth, economic output is a major problem for Nigeria.
It is.
We are saying 3 point something. No, the economists will insist that until we get to a point where we're having double-digit growth, and we have, a proportionate correlation between population growth and economic growth, we'll still be fishing, in the dark. We'll be wasting time. So we may not get to that double-digit at some point soon. But look at earlier, we were celebrating India. That IMF says we'll have 6.1 this year, we'll have 6.8 next year.
Yep.
So what are those concrete ideas
Yes.
that those political parties have? That is the question. And taxation is not necessarily the route out.
Okay.
Except if you are going to put more people
Into the
within
net.
the tax net.
Thank you.
But what we need are original ideas. And the economists should not give up. Because we've seen Economic Advisory Council not working. We've seen the economists being accused of voodoo economics. But that's a problem that we still have to address to be able to ensure welfare and prosperity for everybody.
For all.
So that those who don't go to nightclubs can go to pepper soup joints.
And spend some money.
And indulge themselves. Prosperity for all.
Thank you. Please grill them all. You
Yes,
guys should
well, I'm
please
glad
grill
that the
them
first
today.
guest- the first guest we have now is an economist.
Yes.
So we will have the opportunity to break it down with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Francis.
so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Rotus.
right.